Hello, hi, my lovely, wonderful friends. Welcome back to Sluggy Book Club. I am Cameron, and today we are talking genres. We're talking genre fiction. Calm down. I am continuing on from my literary fiction for romance readers video, which you guys loved and appreciated, and that warms my heart, and I'm so happy. But I did get a few comments from people saying, what about other genres? Can you do some more, please? And so here I am with 4 more genres, and they're coinciding literary fiction recommendations because if you don't know it already, I only read literary fiction and some nonfiction. But when it comes to fiction, it's literary. But obviously, literary fiction is a lot. Literary fiction is anything. What is literary fiction? What is genre fiction? Genre fiction, you know what you're going to get. Genre fiction follows a formula. That does not mean that every genre fiction story is the same, but if you pick up a crime novel, you know what you're going to get. If you pick up a fantasy novel, you know what you're in for, right? Literary fiction is less about the structure of the plot and the narrative kind of themes, and more so about character and prose, and really the story could be anything. So when you're looking to get into literary fiction and you walk into the bookstore and you walk to the literary or general fiction section and you're like, okay, I like reading crime, so how do you know how do you know? So here I am, sitting next to a stack of books that hopefully will help you dip your little tentative but excited toe into the world of literary fiction. Little tiny baby disclaimer just before we get into this video. This is actually my second time filming this entire video. I filmed it a few days ago, and when I went to edit it, realized that all the clips were silent because my random little cheap Amazon microphone had decided to just not work. So I am here today thanks to JBL, who so kindly sent me one of their little Bluetooth portable microphones. Do we want to focus or not? Hey! And you can hear me, can't you? So thank you, JBL, for saving my life. Let's go take 2. Okay, the first genre that I am going to give 3 recommendations for, I'm doing 3 for each, there are 4 genres, buckle up, is crime. It's crime. I am not a crime reader. I'm not a genre reader, but these 3 books I feel are very close to crime. They're all quite different, so you know, you can reach for a different thing depending on what you like from your crime novels. I'm going to start with Ordinary Human Failings by Megan Nolan. This one focuses on the journalistic investigation side of a crime. It follows a journalist in 90s London who is writing a story about a young girl who has died. Yes, this young girl has died and they're trying to figure out who's done it, and he's swooped onto the scene and he's trying to gather all the information. So he's talking to everyone in the building, and then he starts talking to the family of the young girl and really starts milking them for the information. And it is less about like the mystery of the whodunit and more about the journalist and the questionable kind of ethics and how a journalist goes about investigating a crime right when it's happened, right in the, you know, super sensitive emotions running high. And the journalist is just like, so tell me all your secrets so that I can get a juicy story. I don't care that your daughter just died. Kind of vibes. I feel like it almost is verging on like the true crime vibe. If you're interested in how people go about investigating true crimes, documentaries, this might be for you. Speaking of true crime vibes, this next one is really complicated to explain, and bear with me, but it is a true crime novel inside a fiction novel. It is Penance by Eliza Clark, and I loved this book. I love Eliza Clark. I loved this book. Okay, like I said, bear with me. It's difficult to explain. Penance by Eliza Clark contains a true crime book written by a male journalist who investigated the killing of a teenage girl by her classmates. And his investigation techniques kind of crossed some lines, some boundaries, some ethical, etc. And so it had to be pulled from shelves. And this is it being re-released. It's not real. Eliza Clark has written this. Eliza Clark has written this as the male journalist writing the true crime novel. So you open up Penance and it's like, this is this book that was pulled from shelves because blah, 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 was written by this man, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, wait, what? Huh? What am I reading right now? Is this real? Is this true? No, she's made up a true crime novel. Am I making sense? It's a bit mind-boggling, but once you sort of get into it and you wrap your head around what you are actually reading, it is very entertaining. And you need to hold on to what it is. You need to hold on to the fact that it is Eliza Clark writing as a questionable male journalist to really sort of milk it for its humor, to really get the most out of it. Because yes, it's a really dark story and you do feel like you are reading a true crime. It is written in the style of a true crime. But there are moments in the writing that are like, what the hell? That if you were reading a real true crime, you'd be like, this is kind of, what the fuck? Who published this thing? And then you remember it's like, actually Eliza Clark made this up. And you're like, oh my God, she must have had so much fun being like, hee, this is so silly. Are you following me? Penance is a good time. And if you like reading about a crime, this is a crime. Lastly, a little bit more serious, a little bit more dark. Less of the structure of a crime or with the whodunit or the mystery of the how did it happen or any of those kinds of things, but this does focus on criminal activity. It focuses on police corruption and justice, injustice, underbelly kind of criminal circles. It is Nightcrawling by Layla Motley. And when you read this and then realize that Layla was like, I'm pretty sure still in high school when she wrote this, insane. This follows a young girl who really is from a really disadvantaged background. Her parents have, I think from memory, essentially like disappeared and left her and her little brother to fend for themselves and like literally have to like find money to feed themselves, pay for rent, etc. They're in school. Like they're children. And so she falls into night crawling, which is essentially sex work. She falls into this world and it's the last thing she ever imagined herself doing, but it's like desperate times. And then some really fucked up shit starts going down and it's incredible commentary on these kind of poverty-stricken, disadvantaged demographics and the way that police exploit them, the way that the rich exploit them. It's so smart. It's so insightful and moving and dark and awful. It's a really, really well-written novel. And if you're looking to kind of step away from that, this crime happened, we need to find out who did it, oh my God, it was this person who did it, structure of a crime novel, and you just want to kind of get in and crawl around in the nitty-gritty of criminal activity more broadly, definitely read this. Okay, horror readers, I am talking to you, Stephen King, who, listen up, because I have got 3 beautiful recommendations for you that you're just going to forget. You're going to forget that white old man who voted for himself in the New York Times 100 best books of the century, and you're never going to think about him again because you're going to realize that the literary fiction world contains so much incredible horror writing. Now, I am not a huge horror fan, not when it comes to film, a little more so when it comes to books. I can tolerate it a bit more, but there's something about reading something gruesome where your brain has to come up with the imagery, like the visual of it is all on you. That's your imagination. You can create what you want. That's like even more disturbing than just like being fed the visuals through a movie or a TV show. It's like, I did not know my imagination was capable of this. And also power to the author for feeding me this fucked up imagery. I have 3 of my favorite disturbing novels here to share with you. I'm going to go from least to most disturbing because of course, and we're going to start with Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. Now, you may have heard of this because it is about to be, it has in the US, I think, been released as a film starring Amy Adams. This is the film at least is being touted as a horror comedy. So I guess it's a horror comedy. It is. It's like an absurdist kind of silly horror where a woman who is a mother of a young boy and she is a stay-at-home mom and she's really kind of just like a bit let down by what that life looks like and how she's kind of lost her sense of self and her ability to have creative expression and freedom and autonomy. She loves her son like so much and her husband, but she's also like, wow, like I'm really just like a stay-at-home mom now. Hey, like this is my whole fucking life. She wakes up one morning and discovers that she's turning into a dog. And the novel follows her journey to becoming Night Bitch, a dog, shape-shifting into a dog. So this is like body horror, but it's not super gruesome. It's a bit more psychological and absurd and silly even, but it's fun. It's a fun read, and it's also like a really interesting commentary on motherhood. Next, a little more disturbing, a lot more psychological, and a whole lot more confusing. Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. This follows a woman whose wife has just returned from her submarine expedition, which was believed to be lost. They went down and then we lost contact with the submarine and months went by and it was kind of like, yeah, they're not coming back. And then they came back. But the wife's kind of fucked up from that experience. And so the wife who was on land the whole time is trying to take care of her wife who was lost in the bottom of the ocean. But things are really, really falling apart. And she's just kind of becoming worse and worse. And it's really abstract. There's a lot of body horror. You're not really sure what's real. And what I've loved about this book is people's theories about what actually happened, what it's actually about, which I'm not going to discuss now because I'm hopefully talking to some people who haven't read this and are now interested in reading this. But it's really fun to theorize after reading this book because it's like, it's mysterious. You're like, what actually happened down there? Because is this real? And lastly, potentially the most disturbing book I have ever read. It made me go vegetarian. Tender as the Flesh by Agostina Bazterrica. This is I suppose, dystopian, set in a world where a virus has made all animal meat poisonous to humans. We can't eat beef, pork, lamb, etc. anymore. We can't do it because all the animals are infected with some virus that will kill us. But the government's like, well, the people are not going to be happy about the fact that they can't eat meat anymore, God forbid. So what are we gonna? Humans. Human meat. Let's farm humans. So that's what they do. So we find ourselves in this world where the abattoir, our protagonist is an abattoir worker, is a place for processing humans. Yeah, it's really gruesome. It's really fucked up. When you realize that this feels super disturbing because of all the fucked up shit they're doing to humans, and then you're like, oh, this is just what they do to all the animals though anyway, then you're like, maybe I should not eat meat. But it's a lot easier to like empathize and feel it when it's being done to humans. It's such a fucked up read, but like I recommend it to so many people because it's very powerful and so fucked up. What the hell, Agostina? All right, next we're going thriller, which is different to horror, which you would know if you're a consumer of either genre. And I do feel like thriller is kind of more of a movie genre, but there is definitely a genre of book that has thriller, suspense, mystery elements, and these 3 literary fiction novels contain those things. So jumping in with one of my favorite authors, Mona Awad, her latest novel, Rouge, is a super confusing, super tense spiral of a book that follows a woman who has gone back to her mother's place after her mother has just died. She's had to go back to pack up her house. And it's this beautiful house by the sea, gorgeous setting. And she discovers that her mother was a member of this, like, essentially spa, but it's like a club. And she starts to fall into this spa club. But it's kind of a little fucked up and culty. And you're kind of like, yeah, they're not just doing facials in this spa. There's a little bit more going on. And the woman kind of slowly descends into madness, and you slowly are revealed what is really going on at this spa. And it's very tense and mysterious, and you're getting the vibes. You're getting the thriller vibes. Gently, in a artsy, fun literary fiction way. Next is Severance by Ling Ma. This is a pandemic story. It was published prior to the pandemic, but it's very similar what sort of happened in terms of a virus and lockdowns and a lot of people dying and stuff. But it's sort of a dystopian, really worst case scenario version of what could have unfolded. And essentially this woman who has just discovered she's pregnant is trying to figure out how to fend for herself and live in this falling apart society. And she falls in with this group of people who are heading to a shopping center to basically set up camp and try to start a community there. And so she's like, great, sweet, found my people, except they're not her people. And they don't treat her very nicely. And they're men, okay? The group of men. And they see a pregnant woman and they take her in. I'm not telling you any more than that. It's disturbing. Lastly, one of my favorite reads from last year, I think I read this. The Water Cure by Sophie McIntosh. This is another dystopian. I think I do love a dystopian literary fiction novel because there are more to come in the next genre. But anyways, this is mysterious, tense, lots of questions, vibes. We have a family who have moved their daughters out to an island. They've moved to an island because we now live in a world where men make women sick, whatever that means. And so they've decided the best thing we can do is move out to an island to protect our daughters from the men on the mainland. And they discover that there's a cure to the sickness, and it's the water cure. And so they start training up their daughters in the water cure, how to perform it. They practice it every day. They start running these workshops. They have women come over to the island and they teach the women the water cure. And it all just seems a little bit like, do they really have the women's best interests? Is this really what it is on the surface? Because it kind of seems like some fucked up shit has happened. For example, you having to call off the workshops. And then one day the parents go missing and some men show up on the island and the daughters are like, fuck, what do we do? At least we're well trained in the water cure. And then they kind of learn what's really going on because the men from the mainland are like, what are y'all doing here? And they're like, stay away, you're going to make us sick. And the men are like, what are you talking about? Okay, we are at our last genre, and I know, or I assume, there are a lot of you sitting here, a lot of you who read a particular genre sitting here like, finally, it's our turn. Finally, she's gotten to our large and domineering and extremely intimidating and powerful genre. Well, fantasy readers, I am sorry. I have nothing for you. I feel like, look, maybe none of the literary fiction I read could come close to fantasy, but I more so feel that if a story even hinges on like magical realism or has a dragon or a witch or something. Like it just kind of is fantasy. Like I feel like that tipping point is so, you know? So I don't know. Give me some, if fantasy readers, you have made it here and I've just let you down and you were like, damn, I was really hoping for some literary fiction recommendations. Let me know and I will think more on it and I will find some books for you. I promise. But for now, we're going to talk about sci-fi. I have 3 books that I believe could be considered science fiction. I think one of them is actually like secondarily categorized as science fiction. So, but sci-fi I felt was a easy, accessible element that exists in quite a lot of the literary fiction that I read, have read, and enjoyed. The first literary fiction recommendation for sci-fi readers that I have for you is a book called Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl by Andrea Lawler. This is a queer story set in 90s America about a shapeshifter. Shapeshifting feels sci-fi, right? This follows a young queer man who bartends and parties and is like super social and life of the party, and he's also a shapeshifter, and so he kind of just like travels around bartending, moving from state to state to city, shifting into his various lovers' ideal type. And it's so interesting and so fun and a really fascinating commentary on queer communities, especially queer communities in the 90s in the kind of wake of the AIDS pandemic. There's a lot of kind of investigation of stereotypes when it comes to queer and especially gay relationships and sort of archetypal profiles. It's a really, really great read, really well done, and shape-shifting, so sci-fi. Next up, a little book you may have heard of in the last year or so, Poor Things. Poor Things, yes. Now, stick with me, because how is this not science fiction? It is about a scientist who starts playing around with like reanimation and sticking different things together. Like that is science fiction, yeah? And you're like, well, I saw the film. I watched the film before I read this book, and I'm so glad I did, because not only is the structure of this novel just fucking insane, like batshit, like you thought the film was crazy, wait until you open the pages of this book, but also where the film stops, the book keeps going, and so there's a bit of extra background info that you're like, very interesting that they omitted some things from the film. Very interesting to discover them when reading the book. But this is very science fiction-y. This is very wacky, very science fiction. I have never watched Doctor Who, but I just feel like if you like Doctor Who, you'll like this. I know that's an insane thing to say, and you're going to come for me and be like, they're nothing alike. They're absolutely nothing alike. Well, what do I know? The last recommendation is one of my favorite reads ever. It was my favorite read of last year, like number 1 favorite, and is definitely one of my top 5, maybe top 5, or maybe 10 reads. It is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. This was published in the 90s. Despite it being talked about incessantly on social media for the last couple of years, this was actually published in the 90s. And it was originally published in French by a Belgian author, Jacqueline Hartman. And yeah, it was translated to English sometime after that. Anyway, this is set in a world, a dystopian world, where we are following 40 odd women who have been locked in a bunker underground for a countless number of years, roughly 10, probably more. They've lost track. The bunker is guarded by male guards. It is literally just a big open empty room with a toilet. One day, a blaring deafening siren sounds, the men drop everything and run, and the women are like, the fuck just happened? And then they have to figure out how to navigate the world that they knew nothing about, because they've literally been underground for over 10 years. They have no idea what has happened or what is going on or like how to live and exist. And our protagonist is a young girl who, every other woman in this bunker is like a grown woman. And they're like, why is there literally like a fucking 10-year-old girl? Like, was she supposed to be here? And so she's been sort of coming of age in this bunker. And so when she has to start navigating the world with these women, she has so many questions, naturally. And it's her questions, her curiosity about the world, about her own body, about the human condition that guides this novel and is what makes it so spectacular and so intelligent and thought-provoking. Do you see how it's science fiction? I'm not sure I do, but do you? Thank you for watching. Sorry again, fantasy readers. If you like, tell me if you're like let down that I didn't include you in this video, and I am sorry. Like, I did consider it and try. But if you really do want some recs, I will think of some, but they're gonna be like very loosely connected to fantasy. You know what I mean? Like, don't expect like a literary fiction novel with a dragon in it. But we'll work something out if you want me to. Let me know. Otherwise, other genre readers, I hope this video helped you a little bit. I hope you got a little something out of it. I am always here to encourage people to read literary fiction. I am always here to guide people to the literary fiction that they look for. But because literary fiction is so broad, what I find is that people ask me for book recommendations, and there are a bajillion different stories that come to mind. And so it has to be narrowed down. Like, what are you interested in? What do you want to read about? How do you want the book to make you feel? What have you liked reading recently? Because I could pick from anywhere, any kind of world, any kind of setting, any kind of plot, any kind of vibe, any kind of like, literary fiction is crazy, you know? So always here to give recs, always here to encourage, but need a little guidance. Thank you for watching. I hope you go out and read some of these books and then come back and tell me what you thought of them. I'm gonna wrap up. It's a public holiday. I don't want to be working today, so bye.